Oh, you want the laugh to come through. Well, hopefully, that's...
Actually, yeah.
I guarantee you nothing's going to be funny on this show.
Okay.
Right? Because you don't ever do that.
Yes.
Hey, be funny. Anyway, I won't be. Yep.
5, 4, 3.
Hey, and welcome to really the most cleverly named show of all time, the Bub and Bob Show.
It's actually the Bob and Bob Show, but he changes it every time he says it.
Mostly because I talk more and you push buttons.
Yes.
Yeah, you're a good button pusher, Bob. Anyway,
and
the Bub and Bob Show, you kind of figure that out right now. I'm Bub Coons, that's Bob Matossian. What do you do? What's your life like?
I push buttons.
I know. So you're good. You're pretty good.
And I book fantastic guests.
Most of the time.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yeah, as long as I get their name right, I'm good.
Well, I won't mention the bad guests we've had before.
Oh, yeah.
But
okay.
It's okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So are you ready to do this?
I am.
Hey, so our guest today is a great comedian, Brad Stine, and I want you to take a look at this and we'll come back and say hi. But put the camera on him so he can, that's him. Here we go.
One of the things I've tried to live my life by is I don't care what I believe, I care about what is true. If the truth conflicts with my beliefs, I change my belief. That's what we're supposed to do as people. Not blame others. We blame people, we blame manufacturers, we blame food, we blame God. Something goes wrong, God should have been there intervening for us. The same God that apparently the Founding Fathers never wanted anywhere around us. Same God that started this country that we've gotten rid of, and yet, when something goes wrong, they're getting mad at God, but we want him out. That's all you ever hear. Get God out of the Boy Scouts. Get out of the Boy Scouts, God. Get off of our buddy, God. Get out of our universities, God. Get out of the military, God. Get out of our textbook, God. Get out of our homes, God. Get off of our televisions, God. Go away, God. We don't want you, God. We don't need you, God. Katrina hits. God, where are you? Where'd you go? Help us. You don't think God's going, make up your mind. You want me in or out? And we get mad at him. They had pastors, you remember that? Katrina hits. They had pastors on CNN asking him why God would let this happen. Remember that? Why would God let this happen to us? Because people that don't believe in God, they just can't take it when things are out of their control. So they're going back there. Why would God let this happen? Because something bad happened. But then again, I've never seen them once have a pastor on CNN, and they said, it's been a really nice day today. Why would God let that happen? Never gets any credit for doing something good, but boy, something bad happens. God, what have you done? Get all mad at God. And yet people that actually have a Judeo-Christian worldview understand that there's something that we believe in called natural disaster. Disasters are natural because once the fall hit, everything got screwed up. So disasters are now normal. Natural disaster. What do they call it out there? Act of God. Act of God. That's not in the Bible. You know who came up with that? Insurance companies. Yeah. That was their line, so they didn't have to pay off. Hey, sorry, your house got swept away by that hurricane. We'd love to pay you, but it's an act of God. Apparently, God didn't want you to have a house. Who are we to argue, with God? Anyways, keep them premiums coming, will you? Thanks. Act of God.
I tell you, man, that's funny, but the thing with comedians with me, when you watch them on stage, you think you have them pinned down in their personality. Got a lot of high energy, very funny, very clever, and then all of a sudden you meet the guy and there's depth and you're not jumping all over the tables. You're a very calm guy, really, half asleep.
Oh, sorry, I was
not yet.
I was waiting for an actual question there. My
coming.
bad.
It's coming.
Okay, anytime you want to start the interview.
Okay, maybe he is always like this. So, anyways, there's a big difference between you on stage and you here.
Yes.
And so, how much work do you put into the performance?
How much work do I put into the performance? Well, I'm creating my own exercise video.
Yeah,
where
awesome.
Lose weight to the comedy movements of the comedian.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, it's an energetic show.
Yeah.
It's a aggressive show, but I didn't do that as a to contrive that or whatever. It's just the way when I hit the stage, I just felt energetic, and I'd always been like that. I was a professional magician before,
Oh, really?
many years
Okay.
ago, and that's in Southern California. That's where I started in the performance arts, and then that moved into a stage kind of comedy magic show, and that turned into a comedy.
Wow.
It's always been kind of energetic. It's just my personality. It's just the way when I hit the stage. Like
Yeah.
I said, when I'm off stage, I'm more interested in other people.
Yep.
I'm more interested in ideas and concepts and thinking about deeper things. That intrigues me. But then I take all that and put it on
Sure.
stage, and I find a way, hopefully, to make it humorous and interesting enough for people to listen to, and hopefully maybe cause people to provoke thought or to inspire or whatever.
do.
And that's what I've become. Yeah.
You do. You're really good at it. I mean, and we were talking back there, and you mentioned that you're really kind of a prophet to America. Explain that a little
Well,
bit.
here's the deal. Here's the deal. If you are a Christ follower, if that's actually what you believe, and more importantly, it's true, if it's true, not just my religion, whatever, then there are components of that historically that go with being a Christ followers spiritually. And some of that is the callings. There's pastors and teachers and prophets. 10 years ago, I would never have said, I'm a prophet. It sounds ridiculous.
Right. Well,
It's
I mean,
like,
for people that don't know that, there's two proponents to the prophet side. There's one who talks about the future truth, and there's one who teaches the truth right now that God calls to go talk to that.
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about, not a guy that talks about what's going to happen in the future necessarily.
Well,
it may add up to that,
yeah.
but you won't give me a specific thing where it's like in 2028. The palm trees are going to fall over, or do you?
God did tell me to tell you, you got 3 months.
I got 3 months.
Yeah, you want to get your affairs in order.
They are.
I'm just saying. I'm just the messenger.
Now, if that doesn't come true, we get to stone you.
That's right. That's true. Or I could be Mormon prophet. And just
Then
make up a new rule.
Just forget it. Yeah.
But no, actually, you're exactly right. There's a prophetic. There's the John the Baptist guy who just sits out there and wears camel hair and eats bugs and freaks everybody out because but they're compelled to hear him. I got to hear something is happening there, and that needs to be heard. That's my ilk. I was there to tell things that, and I didn't know how this worked.
Yep.
The spiritual dimension of the Christian is so much deeper and so much more sacred than we give it credit for, because we don't take it serious, especially in America.
Sure.
America is weak. American Christianity is very myopic, very shallow, very simplistic. We were given such a pass by God because it was created by people who wanted to give honor to God by starting this nation, and He gave us such a covering.
Yes.
And that's of course being removed now.
Yep.
That's being removed, and we're going to start paying the same price that they got in North Korea and China and Iraq and Iran and Afghanistan. There's a cost to our faith that we've never experienced. So it seems like an anomaly to us, but it's not. It's the price. And we want to cost-free Christianity. And if your Christianity costs you nothing, promise you, it ain't Christian. Promise.
Yeah.
And so I don't like it. I'm not saying I can't wait.
Yep.
Throw me in jail. Can't wait to be tortured. I don't want that. Nobody
Who
wants.
does?
It's much better to read the story and say, "Good for you, brother." That's why. That's my
man.
buddy there.
Yeah.
He's tortured for Christ.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. All right. Anyways, anybody for In and Out?
Yep.
That's how we do it.
Absolutely. That's
And
true.
and God said there's sometimes, and not everybody, but sometimes He said, I think what He's asking you is there any price too high you won't pay? Because He said there is
For
none.
him,
There is none. So that being said, there is an actual spiritual dimension to faith that sometimes isn't put into to play because we don't really seek it. We don't really believe in it. We don't really actually sort of, maybe we'll do it in church in some sort of special hour and a half session in church, and then we go out there and God said, no, you bring that out into the world.
Absolutely.
And do the things that need to be said. And God told me, this is, how else can I perceive it other than this very specific calling? Because I wanted to be a comic. That was plenty.
Yep.
It's hard enough trying to be funny. Not easy.
Yeah, not easy.
And God said, you're a missionary to America. This is many years ago.
Yeah.
And you're going to be a prophet to the church. I'm not an evangelist. My strength is not, getting people saved. They can.
Yeah, it can work
People
that
get
way.
saved at
Sure.
my thing. But my calling is people who are in church, who think they're in the game, and they're not.
Yeah.
So what God has told me is, are you all in? This is kind of what I'm bringing to the table. And He said, that's what I've called you to do. your gift, I thought, was comedy. He says, your gift isn't comedy. Your gift is communication. That's what I've given you. You can communicate as an actor, as a musician, as a comedian, as a writer, as a host, doing the interviews. That's communicating.
Right.
That's what you're good at. The flavor it comes in is comedy. That's all it is. Right. That's just the distribution method by which you're going to bring this information. It's not for everybody. It's not better than everybody else. Happens to be what he said, here's how you're going to deliver this information. And he told me this: you need to bring this to the church, because in the future, America's going to change, and I'm going to have to, you're going to have to renew the minds of my people to realize there's other ways I communicate that they're not used to, and they're going to have to get used to it. Yep. Be prepared for new ways of communicating, because we're going to have to alter some things, because things are coming. How could I have had any shot at anticipating what America was going to become? The loss of freedom, the loss of religious liberties, the loss of courage, the milieu of the Revolutionary War America doesn't exist. The milieu of the Civil War America, the World War I and World War II, even to 9/11. Let's fight terrorism. Let's find some kind of commonality and fight for our liberties and everything. It's gone. Nothing has proven the cowardice and the fear of Americans like this corona thing. It has exposed fearful pastors. It has exposed fearful people. And this is not about saying, has nothing to do with political elements. It has nothing to do with parties. It has to do with dignity of the individual and the autonomy that God expects of us to put into play when your freedoms are being restricted. God gave us pure agency. The power of freedom, the danger of freedom is it can be abused. The danger of freedom is it can be manipulated. The danger of freedom is it can be used for evil things. God gives us such, he puts such sacredness on freedom. He gives you permission to not believe in him. You can actually not believe in him, even though he gives you the ability to contemplate ideas. Those come from nothing. That comes from molecules in motion and whatnot, because it's either we're here by accident or we're here by design. That's all there is. 10,000 years of human history, that's all we've come up with. We're here for a purpose, we're not.
I heard someone the other day, I asked someone, or maybe I said it to myself, but it was like the two things that I think that are missing from America right now is we've discarded the Bible, so we don't have a guide to know what's right or wrong. And we don't know our history, so we can't look back and go what's right or wrong, or what worked and what didn't work. So when you have all these kids that are popping up and holding pictures of Che or Marxist stuff, you're like, do you know what you're saying or what you're
no? And it's such a disgrace to those who suffered under those tyrants. To see that being accomplished, to speak about communism and Marxism and any positive effect is such an evil insult to people that suffered. More people died under communism and Stalinism in the 20th century than every possible philosophy, religious belief system whatsoever in thousands of years before that. More suffered in millions and millions and millions of people through Marxism. But ironically, or prophetically, I guess, sovereignly, my calling as a comic began to shift in the 90s when I saw political correctness coming into play. I wanted to mock it. I wanted to make fun of it. I'm a comic. That's my job, is sort of hold a mirror to culture, to joke about culture, to mock it, to take the wind out of this sort of the momentum of the latest fad or whatever, and that's what people thought it was. It's a fad, and what you'll also see from oftentimes people on the internet is and I see this all the time on my thread, people that hate me, and I'm hated a lot, is they say, oh, because you want to be a racist. Also, all political correctness was just teaching you to be kind to the marginalized and those who haven't had a voice. No, because I actually realized when I began to mock political correctness, you know what? I don't really know what it is. I wonder who started this. This is years ago. I started doing a deep dive, and I go, it's cultural Marxism. Holy crap, this is from the Frankfurt School. This is from the 20s. These are people that moved, intellectuals that moved out of Germany to get away from Hitler, ended up in Columbia University, began the process of getting this inculcated into the universities, which was going to take over our nation by slowly teaching them a whole new, hate capitalism, hate the free market, hate the sovereignty of the individual,
family.
Destroy the family, take away only property rights. You know that when the Constitution was or the Declaration first spoke about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they were first going to call it life, liberty, and private property,
Right.
and they changed it to pursuit
Because of the
happiness.
slaves, right?
But yes,
Yeah.
but private property is necessary
Yeah.
for a free nation.
Yeah,
It's
well, of
necessary
course.
for free people.
Yeah.
And Corona was a way to discover how to destroy private property
take
by
it away from you.
taking away your private autonomy to make decisions that you think are best for you.
Yeah.
So
and
this
that's
is
taking
where
away your
we're-
job.
Oh yeah,
Taking away
yeah.
luck. When
Yeah.
when
And
someone
let's
starts
move- and let's
mandating
move-
and taking stuff away,
And let's
it's like,
move to means of paying for things that are electronic, so that if we decide to shut it down, and Trudeau showed how easy that does.
you got no control. It's all electronic.
Trudeau said, "Hey, I'm going to shut all this down." Are you kidding me?
Yep.
So we're watching it, guys.
We're watching it.
We are in
watching
Civil
it.
War, Revolutionary War, World War II DNA. It's this is what bothered me for so long. We will have our 4th of July celebrations. We'll have our military, Memorial Days and so forth, and salute the soldiers and those who went before us. And God bless them. We should.
Yep.
We should. But what I realized was we want to salute those who did the actual dirty work, who got their hands dirty, who paid to be free. And what I realized was, wait a minute, what if it's your turn? Why does it always have to be a guy with the uniform? Yeah. Yes, sir, and learned all the boot camp. What if it's the civilian's turn to risk? What if it's your turn to maybe die, lose your job? Maybe what we need to return to and remember America in the Revolutionary War Americans who said we're willing to give up life, to give up our sacred honor,
Sacrifice
and everything, because life, freedom, and liberty is more important than life.
Yep, and an average civilian was picking up a hoe and a
Of course.
pitchfork and like this.
So I say to Americans, here's what you're going to need to ask yourself: what are you willing to die for? What are you not accolades, not using terminology and memes and easy bumper stickers to sound good. I'm serious. What will you die for? Because if you don't have something to worth die for, you have nothing to worth live for.
I mean, yep.
And the history of Christianity is you die for your faith first, clearly.
Filled with bloody grounds, yeah.
But if you have been given the gift, the incredible gift of being born in a free nation, who saw the first line of the First Amendment is that religious liberty is sacrosanct. Yeah. The first line of the First Amendment: Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or forbidding the free exercise thereof. That's the first line.
Yep.
Before the press,
very important.
Before addressing your government, before peacefully protesting.
Yep.
Why? Because the religious element is your conscience. That's your freedom. That's your human autonomy.
Yep.
That's why I had to be first.
Yep.
If I can't practice my religious belief system, I can't, and that could be your atheism.
Right.
That could be your polygamy.
Satanism.
It could be whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's how I see the world. That's my presuppositional worldview, and that's how I'm going to live. And I can do it, more importantly, in public than in private.
Right.
Because they'll try to even push you into the corner. Let you go worship who you want by yourself.
Yeah, but
can't bring it out here.
Alone. Shut the door.
Can't bring it out here. It's like, no, this is where it needs to belong.
Yeah.
It's why the founding fathers said this country will not survive without religion. Of course, they're referencing Christianity because that was the religion of note in 1776. Didn't want a theocracy. No, they didn't want a theocracy. No. They came from England. They didn't want a Church of England. They didn't want the government telling you how you could think. The opposite.
Yep.
But what they did say is this is a constitutional republic. The people rule. So that means they're going to have to be moral. They're going to have some kind of compass of reality that drives them to ethical and virtuous behavior because they control themselves. Yep. We're not going to have policemen doing this.
Right.
So we need a religion because religion is the only thing that can do that. Atheism offers nothing like that.
And that's our short history.
Yeah.
Of the world, with comedian Brad Stine. Now,
say something funny, man.
Where did all this come from? Like, go back. How were you raised, and how did you come to
Where
Christ?
Did it come from?
Yeah,
I'm a savant. I'm a savant. I can play the piano, having heard it once. but I can't comb my hair.
Yep.
Listen, when I tell you about the prophet thing, I'm serious.
I know.
Now,
but I got questions.
it was thrust upon me.
Yeah.
You asked me a question. You said,
Yeah.
well, where did you come up with this? I was, what are you drawn to? I'm talking about in a more organic, for those watching. Does anybody ever watch this?
I think
No.
me and him.
Okay.
So
well, when
it'll
you
be-
guys
it'll be fun to
rewatch,
rewatch.
when
I
you
think
rewatch
yeah,
this, so you can
yeah.
get educated.
Yeah.
Finally.
Yeah.
What I realized was I would get on stage. I started working in churches back in the 90s. So I kind of was one of the original Christian comics. I was a Christian in nightclubs performing.
Oh,
in
were you?
comedy
Yeah,
clubs.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was always a Christian, didn't use curse words or gratuitous sexual references because I believe that creativity is funnier than crude. So I wanted to see how can I compete at the best in the best rooms. I was in the improvs and Funny Bones and all the top rooms, and be a believer and be clean, but still be funny. That was my challenge. I wanted to do that.
Yep.
And then I started working in churches. I said, well, that's good. I'm clean. I'm a believer, so I don't have to figure out what they're going to dig or not dig. It's going to be simple. And I started saying things beyond just the comedy, sort of asides in between, because I think I'm with my people. I want to inspire them. And I would see them going from laughter to kind of like locked in. And I go, and I remember thinking, and I told my wife this one time, I said, I don't know what this means. This is 20-something years ago. I think I'm supposed to be in ministry because I know how to make people laugh, and I enjoy that. Nothing wrong with it. But when I say the other things, the sobering things, when people are connected to it, all I can tell you, the only way I know how to describe it is, this is who I am. I found my meaning, my purpose. This is why God made me. For this little season, this little window, and this little time frame of the human experience and on this journey in America, for me to be here, this is why I'm here. Wow. And so I began to realize that the things I cared about were more important than the comedy. But the comedy got me in.
Right.
Got me into the door, got them to listen. For those who are maybe more secular or not Christian or more left-leaning, who have their presuppositional filters on, like we all do.
Yep, everybody does.
So and so they hear something they don't want to hear, and they're trained more and more and more each day to not even listen to other points of view. And especially from the left, they're taught that other points of view are evil and are immoral,
Shut it down.
and thus you can even beat people in the streets because you're only hitting a Nazi. Who's going to complain? This self-righteous narcissist, this really culturally approved of narcissism. And of course it's Marxist still. It's state rules. There's no God, and also this idea of personal subjectivity becomes reality.
Right, that's scary.
Is as scary as it can get. How do I reason with you when you don't need reason?
You can't.
How do I reason with somebody that tells me reason is racist?
Right,
Which they say now.
right,
Because it came from the Greeks, and the Greeks were white.
right. Math is racist.
Math is racist. I said, wait, what? And it is, and then, but if you, use surfboard, it's like, well, you're culturally appropriating from the Hawaiians. It's funny. So the Hawaiians, were the first people that lived next to an ocean. I thought, I wonder if we could float on something. But nobody else figured that one out.
No.
Thank God that the Hawaiians surfed over to Native Americans and taught them to make a canoe, because they couldn't have figured that out. There was no floating before Hawaiians. There's your funny.
Yeah.
But
Thank you.
I realized that there's something at stake that's being lost, that's being stolen, that's being ripped away, and I can't give it away without a fight. And so my comedy became more, and I became dangerous. The comics that can go around and sell 1 million tickets and make a lot of money, and there's a few that have in the Christian community, and they're fine comics and they're funny comics, but they're safe. They're giving them exactly what they want. And there's nothing wrong with going out with your kids and having a good laugh and there's nothing wrong with that at all. don't have the privilege of wasting a moment of my life in front of people that I could inspire and influence and not say, there's something you need to know because time is running out. That's why I'm here.
So where did this come from? I think that I heard Dennis Prager say that the biggest missing virtue in America today is courage. And you talk about courage quite a lot. So when did you become a believer? And then at what point did you like, well, I am the truth teller, and that's the difference between my comedy is I'm going to weave some of this in and hit you kind of hard in the stomach. Because when were you saved? Or?
I'm not at liberty to give you that information. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be a hard-hitting interview where I wouldn't have even agreed. This is ridiculous. Do you say this to everybody?
I'm
crying out loud. Some things are personal, my friend. Sheesh. When did you get saved? Now let me guess, a testimony you want, which normally I charge for. All right, you want to know about my faith. All right, so I got saved in 4th grade in a Presbyterian or Protestant church at the Orange Circle.
After a life of debauchery and sin.
Yes, right.
13
I
years
can't
of
tell you how many bars I got thrown out of when I was 5. But no, I was at the Orange Circle. There was a Presbyterian church, I believe, there, and I was in Sunday school. And I'm 9 years old, and the guy's like, would you want to accept Jesus as your Savior? And it's like, I raised my hands, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, well, let's do that. Yep. And I became a believer. So I always had that initial, and my mom was a Christian. My dad was kind of not really involved at that time in his life. He eventually did get back into the church. But I sort of grew up in a Christian worldview and family, and grandparents were Christians, whatever. So very, normal for me. Came from Indiana originally, so very conservative state, right? And blue collar farmers. So it was just part of who I was. But I was an artist. God gave me this sort of brain that thinks creatively and whatever. And so I first got interested in sleight of hand and magic, and that was my first foray into creativity, and you give the illusion of magical things, and it was just fun to me and interesting, and that became something I could do for a living, and started working in at restaurants here in Southern California, and met a lot of other magicians and whatever that were really good at that, and that was a great community to be part of. But suddenly I was funny in the way I did my stuff. It was natural, so that became comedy, and it just sort of evolved. I didn't even know I was going to do comedy. Was never in my. I knew I could act.
Did someone ever say you were like really funny? Like when you were with your friends, or
I don't know that. I can't think that
really?
Did. I don't really think that I can remember that. I'd always joke around with people, but I don't think I was really the class clown. Was usually somebody that was funny all the time and everybody liked, and I was more annoying. I mean, I think I would really like insulting. I was a little bit more sophisticated. I was a little bit more sophisticated, but to kids, they're not thinking of it in that regard. Right. You can't make fun of people or whatever. But I was more like really having a deeper level of how I thought the funny was, as opposed to, look, I can stick this in my nose. Aren't I ridiculous? So I don't know. I mean, I didn't plan my life. I didn't know what this was all going to look like and how it was all going to pan out. But I grew up, with fairly what used to be standard American perspective. If my dad would say, you can be anything you want in America if you're willing to work hard enough. As simple as that was, I believed him because that's my dad, and that's what dads are supposed to tell you is how the game works, right? It's why we see the largest, the 90% of people in prison are men. And I think 90% of them don't have dads. There's a reason why a father is essential and a mother is essential. There's a reason why. It's why the left wants to destroy the family, because it gives them their cohesiveness. It gives them their foundation of what is true and how to live.
Speaking of that, I just heard a lady say that your children really aren't yours. They're the state's. And until we understand that the children belong to everybody, we're never going to have a great society. I'm like, what in the world is going on?
Well, she's she's a wonderful Marxist, and is doing exactly what they, It's just so crazy that people, who are streaming over our borders to get away from clearly a country that must be much worse than ours. and they're streaming over the border into this racist nation.
Horrible racist
That's
nation.
amazing.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know if you're aware of this or not, and this is a true fact. There was over 300,000 slaves were brought to the United States from sub-Saharan Africa during that time. 1.7 million went to Brazil, by the way. We don't mention that.
Yeah, of course not.
There was a lot in the Dominican Republic, all that. But somehow the 300,000 in here was the worst case scenario.
Yeah. It all started in
somehow
America. There was no slaves before.
We invented
Yeah,
slavery,
no.
and don't read the Old Testament and the Jews and the pyramids. Anyways, but more Africans have immigrated on their own to America than were ever brought here on slavery. Now, for them to be so foolish to leave this pristine land of joy and wonder to come to this racist nation. Wow, I mean, I wish somebody would have told them on the way over. You know that this is
horrible, horrible
You're
place,
really not going to dig this when you get here so it's all lies.
Of course,
It's all a facade, and that's part of, by the way, how I perceived the Corona thing was like, because people are like trying to find their Christian element in all this. Aren't we supposed to be the best of neighbors? Aren't we supposed to be the best of citizens? Yes, you are.
Of course. Yeah,
yes, you are, unless anything is given to you that is unbiblical or trumps God, and most importantly, and here's how I did it, is it based on truth or lies? Because I am commissioned as a Christian to speak truth at all times.
Amen.
That is the number one foundation of who we are. Immutable truth comes in the form of a Savior who said, I am truth, and he said, your only enemy will be the father of lies.
Yeah.
So that's what we're in a battle with right now is truth and lies.
Yeah.
And so we need to speak truth. And my truth that I understood that God was telling me is the church needs to understand what's at stake. Mm-hmm. There's churches that don't exist right now because they shut down during Corona. People left to find the open churches, and these other ones didn't make it. People said, oh, that's too bad. That poor church. I said, no. They were weeded out.
Yep.
God is doing a winnowing. There is a sheep and a goats happening right now, and you better decide what you own. There's in completely heretical denominations now. Completely heretics.
Yep.
This is where we're at.
Yep.
So this is what I say. And now as a comic, maybe it comes with a spoonful of sugar sometimes.
Yep.
Maybe there's some fun with it. There's some laughs. But I don't got a lot of time.
Well, I think that's the best part of comedy, and yours specifically is that it's the setup. You think deeply, then the punch comes. So you deflate it just a little bit to go into the next.
Whenever
thing.
it gets a little deep,
Yeah.
I'll try to find some funny to bring him back.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. He's not going to stay there.
It's like they're chewing meat going, we can't chew anymore. Can I swallow first?
Yeah.
But, listen, I'm just a piece of the puzzle, just like you are. Right, just like he is. Well, no, we could get it.
And your guy,
anybody
and
could
the
do
guy
it.
even behind him, is he on camera, Bob?
Yeah.
The mysterious man over there. Speaking of magician sleight of hand, how do you know that guy? So our audience doesn't creep out the three people that are watching.
His name. Well, I knew him as Greg Wilson. That he changed his name to Gregory Wilson, and he's actually a very world-renowned sleight of hand artist, creator of magic. Tricks and paraphernalia, and has traveled around the world. But he also teaches on in churches for what it's called deception detection, where he teaches how to perceive when you're being deceived. Of course, the original deception was Satan, and he explains those things. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Was that where you met him?
He was
when you were doing all
when
all
I
this
was a magician.
For a long time,
and he
other.
was.
Since this is probably our last show based on everything that Brad said,
Yes.
when we bring him in here and have him do
Sleight of hand. I'll do it toward the end. You're getting ready over there, Gregory.
Talk more about me.
Yes, and we will if you come over here. We'll just switch out and do a show with you. Who were your There's such a great energy about you, and there's some depth and really clever stuff. Who were your comic influences?
Ernest Borgnine.
Oh yeah, number one.
Was the first.
I wanted to be Ernest Borgnine's stuntman because I was fat kid.
There you go.
I did. That was my dream.
Okay. Yeah. And he did a lot of action flicks, if I remember. I can't remember.
He fell down those
is that
stairs.
James Bond or is that Ernest? I don't know that. I mean, I guess like any artist,
Yeah.
you're influenced or you see people and it's interesting to you. I mean, I think one of the first comics I remember being interested in was Steve Martin, of all
Yeah,
people, in
yeah.
the 70s, like so many of us
Sure.
who grew up in that age, just because it was so different
Yeah.
and odd, and
Yeah,
I thought it
very
was
odd.
fun, very
Yeah.
free form and whatnot. Of course, a fan of George Carlin.
Yeah.
Every comic is
Yes.
and was
Yeah.
one of the, because I enjoyed smart comedy. I was
Yeah.
a big fan of Monty Python,
Yeah.
well, that's smart comedy. So I love stuff that had depth. But I realized that, comedy has different shapes and sizes and people fit into categories. And you have sort of the innocuous, fun guys that everybody can like. So in this case, nowadays, Brian Regan's and Jim Gaffigan's
Yep.
and Nate Bargatze's, wonderful comics,
Yep.
very safe and clean.
Sure.
Good for them. Love to listen to them. They're funny.
Yep.
I fit more in the Richard Pryor,
Right.
Carlin, Lenny Bruce category of guys that felt like there was something more
Right.
that I feel like I'm going to use this to talk about.
Yeah.
And I have defended the Christian worldview as my social commentary, and the first, I think still the only Christian comic that does that, that inculcates my show with these ideas of presuming that God is real, reveals himself as Christ. Here's how the game works. He actually gave us a rule book. This is just this is the rule book for the human experience, and we're going to talk about that. So that's how I sort of became that. I hope I'm my own guy. People, a lot of times people say, "Oh, he's trying to do George Carlin or steal Carlin." It's like, I'm doing what I do,
Yeah.
what I believe in. There might be flavors and
Of
tastes
course,
of
yeah,
that,
there's always-
but that's
yeah.
like saying you can't
do
be
anything.
you can't be a 4-piece band because you're just being the Beatles.
Yeah.
No, you get a piece of this guy and then you take
Yeah.
it to your level and you add
Absolutely,
your
yeah.
elements to it and so forth. So, but
Brad, most of the time he's doing Stallone, just so you know.
Well, I wanted to be his. I wanted to be his
Stunt man?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, not anymore. But I mean, like he doesn't.
But yeah, those were people that I enjoyed and I got inspiration from. But again, I always tried to be my own guy, find my own way of doing it, and I'm not political.
No,
I'm not. I'm not
What do you
political.
call this then?
Well, so here's the thing, and people have said that
Yeah.
before. I've had pastors say, I love what you do, but I don't want you to be political. I said, you're going to have, and it's one of the things I taught my son, and I teach a lot of people when it comes to how to engage this new world where lies are done. One of the first things you teach people is to say, define your terms. So if somebody says, don't be political, you say, what do you mean by political?
Absolutely.
Just define that.
Yeah.
Because if you mean don't get up on stage and make it a Trump rally, don't
Right.
worry, I won't.
Don't worry, no problem.
I'm not going to get up on stage and say vote Republican. I'm not.
Right.
I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to go put down. I'm forbidden to hate people. I'm commanded to hate ideas that
Yes,
are different than
agreed.
God's. That's the difference.
Yep.
Now, if certain parties happen to gravitate towards certain cultural issues like pro-life,
So be it.
I can't help
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
glad somebody's standing up for people killing babies.
Yes.
But that doesn't make me suddenly. I was a Republican. I left because I believe they're corrupt. I believe they did not do the checks and balances that they were expected to do to keep things as the founders first envisioned, the three prongs of what makes us who we are. So I'm an independent because I just want to vote for people that I think have virtue, morality, that are originalists when it comes to the Constitution. Because, well, you're being political. I thought you said you weren't political. No. I'm using the law of the land that was given to me when Paul was about to be beaten by Romans for not stopping his preaching. He went to a guy and he goes, listen, before you beat me, can I ask you a question?
Yep.
Are you allowed to beat a Roman citizen
Roman,
without a trial? And the guy said, no, I'm not. And Paul didn't say, well, let me get the Torah out. The Torah said,
yeah.
he said, I appeal to the law of the land.
Yeah.
I appeal to Caesar. He was given a law that he had access to. God, we know that God puts leaders in place.
Yes.
He has ways of manipulating the world or engaging in the world by having a civil government, and so we can use that. So I was just using the law of man. The First Amendment is given to me in this country. If I was in North Korea, we'd be having a new conversation right now. If I was in China, we'd be having a whole different.
We wouldn't be having.
This
that
is my
conversation. Yeah,
exactly. This is mine, and we have a Second Amendment of freedom to defend yourself against tyranny, those who would steal justice and freedoms. That's what I believe, and that to me is a very Christian construct. Keep in mind, our people, the Black Robe Regiment, were the ones that started the Revolutionary War. The British called them, and they were the pastors. The Black Robed Regiment were the pastors who would get on their pulpits and say, the tyranny and stealing and doing injustice and whatever needs to be battled, and God would defend it. So it was Christian concepts that gave them permission to even have a Revolutionary War.
Yeah.
So we either remember that, or I promise we will not have an America. We're already teetering.
We're in a precarious situation, but I like how you said, look, I hate the ideas and not the person.
Yeah.
And I think your comedy reveals that a lot, especially when you were talking about the truth and offending people. It's like there's one thing when you're malicious, like you said, and you're going out just to hurt people. That's wrong.
Yeah.
When I tell you the truth and that offends you,
Yeah.
that's kind of on you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, for example, and it's funny, I was talking
What's his name?
to Greg yesterday, and that's rare because it's hard if I use too many words in a row, he gets confused.
Yeah.
But we were talking about
That's Gregory. By the way.
Yeah, correct.
But he was talking about a joke he did in his tricks and talked about mathematics or something. And then he said, so I'm not a kid and I'm not an Asian, and it used to get a big laugh,
Right.
And then suddenly he wasn't allowed to say that anymore because it's racist.
Yeah.
Now, Asians, and this is documented,
Yep.
seem to do better at mathematics.
Yep.
Then now, is that inherent in their genes, or is it just because their culture teaches them to
Work
say,
harder.
who
I don't know.
cares?
Yeah.
But they're the ones that have these higher maths. That's real.
Yep.
But you can't say it because it's racist. So now you can't even compliment people
Right.
without it being racist. So that shows you how broken and how twisted the left is. But as I've always said, whoever controls the words controls the people.
Yeah.
And they're controlling the words. They can redefine words. They can make them evil. Up is down, black is white. This is how it is. And so as long as you as a person, as a human, fall for that, as long as you allow that to take place, as long as you allow people to demand you treat them in an inauthentic way, as they live in a fantasy and you are acting and to behave as though it's true, that's a lie.
Yep.
And it's not Christian. And that's the truth. Either you redeem culture, which is what we're called to do, or you're wasting our time. We need real believers now. We need true warriors, awakened warriors. Not woke. I want the woke.
Please hear the difference.
I want the woke to go back to sleep.
Please.
But the awakened warriors are those who know what is really true
Yep.
and are willing to fight and die for it. If that's what comes, I don't want that. I'm not shooting for that. I'm not trying to give some false courage as though let's go,
Yeah.
I'm ready to shoot. Of course I don't want that. But I have grandkids and I have kids, and I'm hoping to leave them what I had. I've had a good ride.
Yep.
I've had freedom a long time. I miss what America was when it came to the freedoms and expectations of how you could laugh and joke and be free. And I'm going to do what I can to help retrieve that. If it doesn't happen, I end up in prison or killed, and I'm not kidding. What a way to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I only got a few years left anyways. Really.
Go down like
I'm an
Braveheart.
older
Yeah,
guy.
yeah.
I'm a boomer.
Yeah, yeah.
So if I get fortunate and God blessing me to live in my 80s, I only got about 20 years left.
Yeah.
So why not go out like a man fighting for truth and freedom and go in as that guy? God, I gave it all. I'm leaving my legacy now. Now it's time to leave for the next group. It's my turn to fight so that maybe they won't have to.
You don't
That's
hear
how
a
it is.
lot of comedians say that. That's the courageous comedian.
So Brad,
yeah.
my dad was the sound man for J. Vernon McGee. He used to
nice.
sit there with the dials, and I
Yeah.
sat on his knee next to him watching
Nice.
everything. But he's in his 90s, and it's he would be so confused right now because he started every sentence with a person's country of origin. Oh, the Japanese gardener did that,
Yeah.
and my Italian butcher. And he go, what? They're the best at it. That's how he talked.
Right.
And my kids, I have 4 teenagers who are like, oh, Grandpa, Grandpa, you can't say that.
Yeah.
So I mean, you put it really well. You can't even
even
compliment.
Yeah, we can't reference their reality because it's an insult.
Yeah.
That is what it looks like when you live in listen. In America, you can live in a fantasy if you want to. You don't have permission to make me live there with you. That's when you're still in my liberties. I'm telling you, the lack of depth of Christian worldview by typical Christians. That's why churches bring me in for full weekends. I do Friday night, men only. Men only, because the single most important component to the church is men.
Amen.
It's the least effective. It's the least engaged. It's the most difficult to do, and yet they're more important than the women and the children by far.
Yep.
By far, when it comes to the hierarchy of how God created the world.
Right.
We're not better.
Yeah, and the expansion
We're
of the
just
gospel.
put in,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay, so then I do Saturday night, I do my comedy. I speak the things I speak about. I talk about the culture because that's the purpose of a comic and it's the purpose of a Christian. And then I say, come on back on Sundays, and then I can talk about things about what's the difference between Christianity and critical race theory, or Black Lives Matter, or cultural Marxism. This isn't to make a political stance. It's talking about reality.
Yep.
These are competing philosophies.
Absolutely.
And you need to understand them so you can look them. And then I have another show called The God Experience where I actually talk about philosophical proofs of God, but in an entertaining way. So God has called me to be an art. I'm a performance artist. I come in and I try to bring a new way and a fresh way to give an old story.
Yep.
You know, message of Jesus never changes. The messenger does.
Yes.
Sometimes he looks like me. Sorry, your fault. This is what you got stuck with because you weren't fighting when we needed you. So you get the comic now. God's like going, who do we got? Is Billy Graham?
Nobody's left.
Graham's gone. Stine's here. No, come on. We got to draw the line. But, you know.
That's all we got. Hell, even you use an ass, too.
Exactly.
Whatever it takes.
But listen, don't give up hope.
Yeah.
You know, it's not over until they kill us.
Yeah.
We're still here.
What are
Let's
you-
still try.
What are you going to threaten me with heaven, right?
Yeah,
That's what
amen.
I was like.
Exactly.
It's like so,
Exactly.
hey, where can we find your stuff? Where do we go to find some
You can go to
of your comedy?
bradstine.com, and that's kind of shows where I'm working. And if you happen to be a pastor or work with a church or a conservative group or any kind of political group that wants to talk about these ideas and re-remember America, I have a show called The Spirit of America that I do with an opera singer from Italy who immigrated here, and he became a fan of mine. He's Christian and he's a conservative, and he moved to here, and so I talk about America and then laugh, and then he sings opera. I've got a show with a guy named Rick Green called the Comedy and Constitution Show. We're going to be touring in April all throughout Texas. We go into churches and we laugh, but we talk about America and our Christian heritage. This is my call. This is, as long as I got breath left. I don't know how much more is left. This is what I'm going to fight for. And so I'd love to come to your church. Just go to bradstine.com. Say, how do we connect you and bring you in? And we can make it happen.
We'll put a bunch of links underneath that so you can go right there. It was a blessing to have you. Thanks so much. You're very unique, very smart, very funny guy. So thanks for being on here.
If I've created the illusion that I'm smart and have depth, once again, I've accomplished my mission.
See you guys later.
Adios.